Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty and watched the massive alien ship approach Earth. The ship was huge and covered with bright banners that somehow moved in space even though there was no wind. Jake had been in the Navy for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this before. The alien ship was silver and gold with strange symbols painted on its sides. It was at least 10 times bigger than any human ship, and it moved slowly like it wanted everyone to notice how important it was. The banners fluttered around the ship in perfect waves, as if invisible fans were blowing them. Communications. Officer Lisa Parks turned to Jake with a big smile on her face. She was trying hard not to laugh, but her eyes were bright with amusement. "Sir, we have an incoming transmission from the alien vessel," she said, while pressing buttons on her control panel. Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. This was the moment that would change human history forever. He had practiced his first contact speech many times, and he was ready to represent all of humanity with dignity and respect. The main screen flickered, and then showed the inside of the alien ship. A tall creature appeared on the screen wearing elaborate robes that seemed to be made of liquid gold. The alien had 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows on its face, and a mouth that was way too small for its head. On top of its head sat a crown that looked like it was made from twisted metal and glowing gems. "Greetings, primitive species of the 3rd planet, from your yellow star," the alien said in a voice that sounded like it was trying very hard to be impressive. "I am High Commander Zixthal of the mighty Galactic Empire. We have traveled across the vast darkness of space to bring you the great honor of our presence." Captain Ryan Burke, who was sitting in the second command chair, raised his hand like he was in school. "Excuse me, but did you just call us primitive?" he asked with a confused look on his face. "And I have to ask about those banners. How exactly are they moving in the vacuum of space?" The alien blinked all 6 of its eyes at the same time, which made several crew members on the bridge start to smile. "The sacred banners are held aloft by the cosmic winds of superiority, of course," Zixthal said, as if this was the most obvious thing in the world. "They flutter with the eternal breeze of our magnificent greatness." Navigation Officer Amy Chun made a small choking sound and covered her mouth with her hand. She looked like she was trying to swallow a laugh that was fighting to get out. Several other crew members were also struggling to keep straight faces. "Now, as I was saying before your rude interruption," the alien continued while adjusting his ridiculous crown, "you will immediately submit to the glorious rule of our empire. We have conquered 17,000 star systems and added their resources to our magnificent collection." "Wait a minute," Jake said while trying to process what he was hearing. "You want us to just surrender right now, without even explaining who you are or what you want from us? We are the Galactic Empire, and we want everything you have because we are superior to you in every possible way." Zixthal replied as if this explained everything perfectly. "Your planet will become a tribute world, and you will send us your best resources every cycle of your moon." Amy Chun finally lost control and started laughing out loud. The sound echoed across the bridge and made everyone turn to look at her. She tried to stop, but every time she looked at the alien's serious face, she started laughing even harder. "What is that horrible noise?" Zixthal demanded while all 6 of his eyes focused on Amy. "Are you making some kind of primitive threat display?" "We do not fear your barbaric war cries. That's laughter," Jake explained while trying to keep his own voice steady. "She's laughing because she finds something funny, funny." The alien repeated the word like he had never heard it before. "What does this word mean? Is it some kind of weapon?" Ryan Burke couldn't hold back anymore and started chuckling. "No, it's not a weapon. It's what humans do when something seems ridiculous or amusing." "Ridiculous." Zixthal's voice got higher and more offended. "There is nothing ridiculous about the mighty Galactic Empire. We are the most serious and important organization in the entire galaxy. This made Amy laugh even harder, and now half the bridge crew was trying not to smile. Lisa Parks had to bite her lip to keep from joining in, and even Jake felt the corners of his mouth twitching upward. "Look, I'm sure you're very important," Jake said while trying to be diplomatic. "But you have to understand that from our perspective, some of the things you're saying sound a bit unusual. Cosmic whines of superiority, for example. There is nothing unusual about cosmic winds." The alien insisted while his crown slipped slightly to one side. "They are a well-known phenomenon throughout the galaxy. Every civilized species understands the basic principles of superiority physics." "Superiority physics?" Ryan repeated slowly, and then started laughing so hard that tears came to his eyes. "Oh man, that's good. Did you guys make that up yourselves?" The alien's face turned a darker shade of purple, and he started making angry gestures with his forearms. "How dare you mock the sacred sciences of the Empire? We have studied superiority physics for 10,000 years. I'm sorry, but we've never heard of superiority physics," Jake said while trying to regain control of the situation. "Could you maybe explain how it works?" "It works because we are superior," Zixthal said, as if this was a complete explanation. "The cosmic winds blow our banners because the universe recognizes our greatness. The laws of physics bend to acknowledge our magnificence." Amy Chung was now laughing so hard she had to hold onto her control panel to stay upright. Her laughter was contagious, and more crew members were starting to lose their composure. Even the usually serious security chief Dan Miller was smiling. "This is intolerable," the alien shouted while his crown fell completely off his head. "You will show proper respect for your new masters, or face the consequences of our terrible wrath." "What kind of consequences?" Jake asked, while wondering if this entire situation was some kind of elaborate joke. "We will unleash our fearsome weapons of mass intimidation upon your pathetic world," Zixthal declared while trying to put his crown back on. "Our doomsday devices will make you tremble with appropriate fear and submission." The transmission suddenly cut off, and the screen went black. The bridge was quiet for a moment, except for the sound of Amy Chun still giggling quietly to herself. Jake looked around at his crew and saw that everyone was struggling not to laugh. "Well," he said finally, "that was certainly interesting." "What do you all think about our new galactic neighbors?" "I think they might be the most unintentionally funny aliens in the universe," Ryan said while wiping tears from his eyes. "Did they really just threaten us with weapons of mass intimidation?" "That's what the translator said," Lisa confirmed while checking her equipment. It also picked up some background chatter from their ship. Apparently, they're having an argument about whether their cosmic wind generators are working properly. Jake shook his head and tried to figure out what to do next. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization was not going the way anyone had expected. 3 days after the first contact disaster, the Galactic Empire sent another message to Earth. This time they wanted to meet face-to-face on the planet's surface to discuss what they called the terms of your inevitable surrender. President Lavra Thompson decided that humanity needed to try diplomacy before things got worse, so she assembled the best negotiation team available. Ambassador Helen Rodriguez had spent her entire career dealing with difficult international situations, but she had never faced anything like this before. She stood in the newly built meeting facility in Geneva, Switzerland, and tried to prepare herself for whatever was coming. The building had been constructed in just 3 days using prefabricated sections, and it looked more like an airplane hangar than a place for historic. An EGOTIATIONS Dr. Peter Walsh, the team's linguist, was still working on understanding the alien language even though they had translation devices. He had discovered that many of the aliens' words had multiple meanings that often contradicted each other. The word they used for greeting also meant threat and bathroom request. Depending on how it was pronounced, Colonel Kate Stevens, represented the military, and she was not happy about meeting aliens who had already threatened Earth. She wore her dress uniform and kept her hand near her sidearm, even though everyone knew human weapons would be useless against advanced alien technology. She was there mainly to observe and report back to the Pentagon about alien capabilities. The alien delegation arrived in a shuttle that looked like a golden egg with too many windows. It landed in the parking lot outside the building and sat there humming loudly for 10 minutes before anyone came out. When the doors finally opened, 12 aliens walked out in what appeared to be a very specific order based on the height of their hats. The alien in front wore a hat that was taller than he was. It looked like someone had taken a normal hat and then added 6 more hats on top of it. The hat was covered in ribbons and medals and small flags that fluttered in the earth breeze. Behind him came 11 other aliens with progressively shorter hats until the last one wore what looked like a tiny hat balanced on top of his head. They marched into the building making synchronized steps that seemed designed to look impressive, but actually made them look like they were doing some kind of elaborate dance. Each alien carried a staff with different symbols, and they all wore robes that dragged on the ground behind them. The lead alien stopped in the center of the room and raised his staff high above his head. "Behold, inferior humans," he announced, in a voice that echoed strangely in the large space. "I am Supreme Negotiator Crixtel Morphix Silenex, the 17th Keeper of the Sacred Pompousness, Master of Unnecessary Titles, and holder of the Golden Hat of Ultimate Authority." Dr. Walsh leaned over to Ambassador Rodriguez and whispered, "I checked the translation 3 times. His title actually does translate to Master of Unnecessary Titles. I don't think he realizes what it means in English." The Supreme Negotiator continued his introduction. "I have been sent by the High Council of Universal Importance to accept your complete surrender and explain how you will serve the Empire for the rest of your pathetic existence." Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward with her most diplomatic smile. "Thank you for coming, Supreme Negotiator. We appreciate this opportunity to discuss our mutual interests and find a peaceful solution that benefits both our peoples." "There is no mutual interest," the alien replied, while adjusting his enormous hat. "You have nothing we want except your obedience. However, we must first perform the ritual of diplomatic superiority to establish the proper hierarchy between our species." Colonel Stevens raised an eyebrow and whispered to Dr. Walsh, "What kind of ritual are we talking about here?" The Supreme Negotiator heard her and turned to face the colonel. "The ritual is an ancient ceremony that demonstrates the natural order of the galaxy. We will show you our superior culture, and you will acknowledge our greatness by remaining silent." And still, what happened next would be remembered as one of the most bizarre diplomatic moments in human history. The 12 aliens formed a circle and began what could only be described as the strangest dance anyone had ever seen. They moved their arms in complex patterns while making sounds that seemed to be a combination of singing and mechanical noises. Supreme Negotiator started spinning in the center of the circle, while the other aliens moved around him in the opposite direction. His giant hat wobbled dangerously, and he had to keep reaching up to steady it. The other aliens were chanting something that Dr. Walsh's translator was having trouble with, but it seemed to be about the crushing of inferior civilizations under the boot of progress. Ambassador Rodriguez tried to maintain her professional composure, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. The aliens were now making movements that looked like they were trying to represent spaceships flying through space, but it looked more like they were pretending to be airplanes. One alien kept making swooshing noises while spreading his arms and running in small circles. The ritual reached its climax when all 12 aliens suddenly stopped moving and pointed at the human delegation. "Now you must perform the response of acknowledgement," the Supreme Negotiator announced while breathing heavily from all the spinning. You will bow down and repeat the sacred words of submission 3 times. Colonel Stevens looked at Ambassador Rodriguez with an expression that clearly said, "You've got to be kidding me." Dr. Walsh was frantically checking his translation device to make sure he had understood correctly. Ambassador Rodriguez realized that this was a critical moment that would determine the future relationship between Earth and the Galactic Empire. "I'm sorry," she said as politely as possible, "but could you tell us what the sacred words of submission are? We want to make sure we get this right." The Supreme Negotiator seemed pleased that the humans were asking for instructions. "You must say we are unworthy space monkeys who begged for the honor of serving the magnificent empire. Then you must say it 2 more times while hopping on 1 foot." Dr. Walsh made a choking sound and covered his mouth with his hand. Colonel Stevens' face turned red, and she looked like she was trying very hard not to explode with laughter. Ambassador Rodriguez felt her diplomatic training being tested to its absolute limits. "Space monkeys," she repeated slowly to make sure she had heard correctly. "Yes, it is the traditional term for primitive species that have not yet achieved true civilization." The alien explained matter-of-factly. "It is considered a great honor to be acknowledged as space monkeys by the Empire." That was the moment when Ambassador Rodriguez's composure finally cracked. She started with a small smile that grew into a grin, and then became a full laugh that she couldn't control. The sound seemed to confuse the aliens who had never heard laughter before. Colonel Stevens joined in next, followed by Dr. Walsh, and then by the other human staff members who had been watching from the sides of the room. Soon the entire building was filled with the sound of humans laughing at the most ridiculous diplomatic proposal in history. The Supreme Negotiator's hat fell off his head and rolled across the floor while he stared at the laughing humans in complete bewilderment. "What is happening?" he asked the other aliens. "Are they having some kind of medical emergency?" The negotiations were officially postponed when security guards had to escort the human delegation out of the building because they couldn't stop laughing loud enough to continue the meeting. The Galactic Empire was not happy about the failed diplomatic meeting, and they decided to show humanity what would happen if they continued to be disrespectful. High Commander Zix Tao sent a message to Earth announcing that his fleet would demonstrate their weapons of mass intimidation so that humans would understand the terrible power they were dealing with. Fleet Admiral Chuck Bradley received the alien transmission at his command post on Luna Station and immediately ordered the human fleet to take defensive positions around Earth. He had been expecting something like this ever since the diplomatic talks collapsed in laughter 3 days earlier. The aliens seemed to think that humans would be scared into submission if they saw enough impressive technology. Captain Nicole Price commanded the UE's Freedom, which was humanity's newest and most advanced warship. She led a small fleet of 12 ships to observe the alien demonstration from what they hoped was a safe distance. Nicole had been in the Navy for 15 years, and she had seen plenty of military exercises, but she had never watched aliens show off their weapons before. The alien fleet arrived exactly on schedule, which surprised the humans because so far the aliens had not seemed very organized about anything. There were 50 alien ships arranged in a perfect formation that looked like they had practiced it many times. The ships were all different sizes and shapes, but they moved together like they were connected by invisible strings. The flagship was enormous and painted in bright colors that hurt to look at directly. Along its hull were written words in the alien language that Dr. Walsh back on Earth translated as Destroyer of Hope and Bringer of Gloom. The ship was covered in spikes and sharp edges that served no practical purpose, but were obviously meant to look scary and intimidating. "Attention, primitive humans," came the transmission from the alien flagship. "You will now witness the awesome power of the Galactic Empire. Prepare to tremble in fear as we demonstrate why resistance is completely hopeless. Weapons Officer Tony Martinez was monitoring all the sensor readings from his station on the Freedom's bridge. He had been analyzing alien technology since first contact, and he was curious to see what their weapons could actually do. So far, the aliens had made many claims about their superior technology, but they had not provided any proof. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy buildup in the alien flagship," Tony reported to Captain Price. "Whatever they're charging up, it's using more power than our entire ship generates in a week." Captain Price nodded and ordered all ships to maintain their distance while recording everything for later analysis. "Make sure we get detailed scans of whatever they're about to do," she told her crew. "The folks back home are going to want to see this." The alien flagship slowly turned to face a large asteroid that was drifting nearby. The asteroid was about the size of a city block and made a perfect target for whatever weapon the aliens were planning to use. Red lights began flashing all over the alien ship, and warning sounds echoed through space, even though sound should not travel in a vacuum. "Now behold the terrible might of our doomsday cannon," announced the alien commander over the communication channel. "This weapon has destroyed entire planets and reduced proud civilizations to cosmic dust." What happened next was accompanied by dramatic music that seemed to be playing from speakers mounted on the outside of the alien ship. The music sounded like something from an old movie about space battles, and it included sound effects of laser beams and explosions that made no sense in the vacuum of space. The Doomsday Cannon was a massive weapon that extended out from the front of the alien flagship. It was covered in glowing crystals and spinning parts that seemed designed to look as impressive as possible. Energy began building up in the weapon, and it started making humming sounds that somehow reached the human ships. Despite the laws of physics, "Are they actually playing theme music for their own weapon?" asked Science Officer Karen White while staring at her instruments in disbelief. "And how are we hearing sound effects in space?" Captain Price was wondering the same thing, but she decided to focus on the demonstration instead of trying to understand alien technology. "Just keep recording everything," she told her crew. "We'll figure out how they're doing it later." The energy buildup in the Doomsday Cannon reached its peak, and the weapon fired a beam of pure energy at the target asteroid. The beam was bright pink and sparkled like glitter as it traveled through space. When it hit the asteroid, there was a flash of multicolored light and the sound of what could only be described as cosmic wind chimes. Instead of being destroyed, the asteroid began glowing with a soft pink light that pulsed in time with music. The music was a waltz that seemed to be coming from the asteroid itself, and the entire rock was now covered in what looked like disco ball fragments that reflected light in all directions. "Sir," reported Tony Martinez while checking his readings 3 times to make sure they were correct. "The alien Doomsday Cannon appears to have turned the asteroid into some kind of cosmic disco ball that's playing dance music." The bridge of the Freedom was completely silent as everyone tried to process what they had just witnessed. The most feared weapon of the Galactic Empire had just transformed a space rock into the universe's largest party decoration. The asteroid continued to pulse with pink light while playing waltz music that somehow reached every ship in the area. "Did their ultimate weapon just make a disco ball?" asked Navigator Bill Johnson while pointing at the sparkling asteroid on the main screen. Before anyone could answer, the alien commander's voice came over the communication channel again. "You see the terrible power of our technology," he announced proudly. "Your primitive minds cannot comprehend the advanced science behind our weapons of mass intimidation." Captain Price looked around at her crew and saw that everyone was struggling not to laugh. The alien's most powerful weapon had just created what appeared to be the galaxy's most fabulous dance party accessory. The asteroid was now slowly rotating while casting colorful light patterns across all the nearby ships. "Captain," said Communications Officer Linda Roberts while trying to keep her voice steady, I'm receiving a transmission from Admiral Bradley. He wants to know if the aliens just turned an asteroid into a glitter ball. Tell him yes, Captain Price replied, while watching the sparkling rock continue its cosmic dance. And ask him if we should request the song playlist. The alien commander seemed to interpret the human silence as appropriate fear and awe. Now you understand why resistance is futile, he declared. Our weapons can transform matter itself according to our will. We can make your entire planet into a monument to our glory. Science Officer Karen White was analyzing the energy readings from the alien weapon, and she made a discovery that explained everything. Captain, I think I know what happened, she said while pointing to her display screen. Their doomsday cannon isn't actually a weapon at all. It's some kind of cosmic redecorating device. What do you mean? Captain Price asked while trying to understand how anyone could mistake a disco ball maker for a planet-destroying weapon. Based on these energy signatures, it looks like their cannon is designed to change the appearance and properties of matter, Karen explained. They probably use it to redecorate conquered planets according to galactic fashion trends. Tony Martinez started laughing first, and soon the entire bridge crew joined in. The idea that the aliens had been threatening humanity with their interior decorating equipment was too ridiculous to believe. The Galactic Empire's ultimate weapon was essentially a cosmic home improvement tool. The alien fleet continued their demonstration by firing several more weapons at different asteroids. One weapon turned a space rock into what appeared to be a giant piece of abstract art that played soft jazz music. Another weapon covered an asteroid in fake grass and tiny alien lawn ornaments. A third weapon created what looked like a cosmic garden, complete with flowers made of crystallized starlight. "This is Admiral Bradley to all ships," came the transmission from Luna Station. "Are we watching the galaxy's most advanced civilization demonstrate their landscaping equipment?" Captain Price wiped tears from her eyes and tried to compose herself. Enough to respond. "That appears to be correct, sir. Their weapons of mass intimidation seem to be designed for cosmic home decoration rather than actual destruction." The demonstration continued for another hour as the aliens showed off increasingly ridiculous modifications to various space rocks. They created cosmic sculptures, party decorations, and what appeared to be the universe's largest wind chime collection. The entire area around Earth was now filled with sparkling, dancing asteroids that played different types of music. The alien commander finally concluded the demonstration with what he clearly thought was a terrifying threat. "Let this be a warning to all who would oppose the Galactic Empire. We have the power to completely transform your world according to our aesthetic preferences. Your planet could become a cosmic art installation that celebrates our magnificent culture." The human fleet spent the next several hours trying to stop laughing long enough to file their reports. After the military demonstration failed to frighten humanity into submission, the Galactic Empire decided to take more serious action. They sent an official invitation to Earth, demanding that human representatives appear before the High Council, of universal importance, to answer for their crimes against galactic law. The message explained that humanity was being charged with the most serious offense possible, which was called insufficient reverence in the presence of obvious superiority. President Laura Thompson knew that this could be humanity's last chance to avoid a war with an alien empire that controlled thousands of worlds across the galaxy. She carefully selected a diplomatic team that she hoped could handle whatever strange situation they were about to face. The team would travel to the alien capital world in one of their own ships, since humans did not yet have technology for traveling between star systems. Secretary of State Greg Adams led the human delegation because he had more experience with difficult negotiations than anyone else in the government. He had spent years dealing with hostile, foreign governments and unreasonable dictators, but he had never faced anything quite like the Galactic Empire. Greg was known for staying calm under pressure, and finding diplomatic solutions to impossible problems. Dr. Susan Baker joined the team as their xenobiologist and expert on alien cultures. She had been studying the Empire's behavior since first contact, and she had developed several theories about why they acted so strangely. Susan believed that the aliens might have evolved from a species that used elaborate displays to establish dominance rather than actual fighting. This would explain their obsession with ceremony and titles. Cultural attach. Ben Clark was included because he specialized in understanding how different societies communicated and what their customs meant. Ben had worked all over the world, helping diplomats avoid cultural misunderstandings that could cause international incidents. He hoped that his experience with human cultures would help him figure out what the aliens were really trying to accomplish. The journey to the alien capital took 3 weeks in one of their passenger ships, which was decorated like a flying palace, complete with golden walls and crystal chandeliers. The human delegation spent most of the trip trying to prepare for whatever they would face at the trial, but it was difficult to plan when they had no idea what galactic law was supposed to be. The alien capital world was called Pompous Prime, and it looked exactly like what humans would expect from a civilization that took itself too seriously. Every building was covered in statues and decorations that seemed designed to impress visitors with how important everything was. The streets were lined with monuments celebrating various alien achievements, like the invention of the ceremonial hat and the discovery of cosmic wind patterns. The council chambers were located in the largest building on the planet, which was shaped like an enormous crown with towers that reached into the clouds. Inside the building, everything was made from materials that sparkled and glowed in different colors. The walls were covered with portraits of important aliens, wearing increasingly ridiculous outfits and holding various ceremonial objects. High Council of Universal Importance consisted of 12 different alien species, and each one sat on a throne that seemed designed by someone who had heard descriptions of impressive furniture, but had never actually seen any. One species sat on what appeared to be a giant toilet made entirely from purple crystals that played soft music when anyone moved. Another species perched on top of a throne that looked like an enormous high-heeled shoe covered in blinking lights. Strangest throne belonged to a species that looked like walk-in trees with too many arms. Their throne was actually a small forest, complete with tiny animals and a miniature weather system that created its own rain clouds. The alien judge sat in the middle of this ecosystem, wearing what appeared to be a crown made from living butterflies. Humans of the planet Earth, announced the council speaker, who was a creature that looked like a cross between an octopus and a Victorian gentleman wearing a top hat. You stand accused of the gravest crime known to galactic civilization. You have shown insufficient reverence in the presence of obvious superiority, which is a capital offense punishable by having your entire species declared officially embarrassing. Dr. Baker leaned over to Secretary Adams and whispered, "I checked the translation, and that's exactly what they're charging us with. Apparently, it's the worst thing you can do in their legal system." The prosecution was handled by someone called Prosecutor Magnificent Zilthes, who wore robes that seemed to be made from liquid starlight and a hat that was taller than most human buildings. He began his case by presenting surveillance footage of humans laughing during various encounters with Imperial representatives. The footage showed Admiral Morrison saying these guys can't be serious, and Ambassador Rodriguez laughing during the diplomatic meeting. You can clearly see the defendants committing acts of criminal disrespect, the prosecutor declared, while pointing at the screen with a staff that had tiny bells on the end. They have consistently failed to show proper awe when confronted with our obvious superiority. This behavior threatens the very foundation of galactic civilization. The prosecutor spent the next 4 hours presenting evidence that included detailed analysis of human facial expressions during alien encounters. He had charts showing smirk frequency rates and inappropriate smile duration, along with expert testimony from something called a professor of reverence studies. The professor explained that humans had failed to display any of the 17 required signs of proper submission. The most damaging evidence came when they played a recording of the human fleet's radio communications during the military demonstration. The recording included Captain Price asking if the aliens had just made a disco ball and Admiral Bradley wondering if they were watching a cosmic landscaping show. The prosecutor claimed this proved that humans were incapable of recognizing superior technology even when it was demonstrated right in front of them. Furthermore, continued Prosecutor Magnificent, Zilvis, while his hat swayed dangerously in the artificial breeze that seemed to follow him around. The defendants have shown no remorse for their crimes. Even now they sit in this sacred chamber without displaying any of the proper signs of fear and trembling that are required when facing galactic justice. Secretary Adams looked around the council chamber and tried to understand what was happening. The entire legal system seemed to be based on the idea that everyone should automatically recognize how important the aliens were and act appropriately impressed. The problem was that humans found it very difficult to be impressed by people who sat on crystal toilets and wore butterfly crowns. When it was time for the defense to present their case, Ben Clark stood up to address the council. He had spent the entire trial trying to figure out what the aliens actually wanted from humanity, and he thought he might have found the answer. "Your Honors," he began, while trying to sound as respectful as possible, "I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding between our species. We're not laughing at you because we don't respect you. We're laughing because many of the things you do seem genuinely funny to us." This statement caused a stir throughout the council chamber as the 12 species began talking among themselves in their various alien languages. The council speaker raised his tentacle for silence and asked, "What do you mean by this word funny? We are not familiar with this concept." Dr. Baker stood up to help explain. Humor is when something seems amusing or entertaining in a way that makes you want to laugh. Humans laugh when we see things that seem silly or absurd or unexpected. It's not meant as an insult. "You find us amusing?" asked the alien judge from the forest throne, while several tiny birds landed on his butterfly crown. "Are you saying that the mighty galactic empire is entertainment for your primitive species?" "Well, yes, actually," Ben Clark replied honestly. "Your cosmic winds of superiority are just hidden fans in your ships. Your doomsday cannon makes disco balls instead of destroying things. Your most serious legal charge is about not looking impressed. Enough. From our perspective, these things are genuinely funny." The council chamber fell completely silent, except for the sound of the crystal toilet throne playing its soft background music. One of the alien council members, who looked like a giant hamster wearing a cape, slowly raised his paw. "Are you telling? Use that our battle cry, which is fear, our terrible might of comfortable walking, actually sounds ridiculous to other species?" he asked in a small voice. "I'm afraid so," Secretary Adams replied gently. "We understand that these things are important to your culture, but they don't seem very threatening to us." What happened next would be remembered as the moment when an entire galactic civilization suddenly saw itself through someone else's eyes. It started as a small chuckle from somewhere in the back of the chamber, and then spread like wildfire through the room as one alien after another began to realize how silly they must look to outsiders. The council speaker removed his monocle, which turned out to be purely decorative since his species had no eyes, and began laughing. "By the sacred pompousness," he said between chuckles, "we really are completely ridiculous, aren't we?" The laughter that started in the council chamber spread faster than anyone could have imagined, and within hours it had reached every corner of the galactic communication network. What began as a small chuckle from council member Thyrix Null of the crystal toilet throne became a galaxy-wide revolution that would change everything forever. The first alien to really understand what was happening was Commander Blickstar of the Shu Throne, species who had spent years wondering why other civilizations always seemed confused during first contact meetings. "Wait a minute," he said, while adjusting his position on his giant high-heeled Shu throne. "Our traditional greeting really does translate to 'we come in peace,' but also 'we demand your lunch money,' doesn't it?" Dr. Susan Baker nodded sympathetically. "Yes, it does, and your victory dance looks exactly like humans trying to swat invisible. Flying insects while hopping on one foot." This revelation caused Commander Blickstar to laugh so hard that he fell off his Shu throne and rolled around on the floor while making sounds that his species only made when they were extremely happy. His laughter was contagious, and soon other council members were joining in, as they began to see their own customs through human eyes. The alien judge from the forest throne, whose name was something that sounded like trees, growing very quickly, realized that his crown of living butterflies kept flying away whenever he got excited during trials. "No wonder other species never take our legal system seriously," he said while watching his butterflies scatter around the chamber. Half my crown just flew into the prosecutor's hat. Prosecutor Magnificent Zilthus was having his own moment of understanding as he looked down at his robes made of liquid starlight that kept dripping glowing drops onto the floor. "My ceremonial outfit is literally melting, isn't it?" he asked, while trying to catch the drips in his hands. "And this staff with bells makes me sound like a cosmic ice cream truck." Secretary of State Greg Adams watched in amazement as the most powerful beings in the galaxy had what could only be described as a collective moment of self-awareness. These aliens had built an empire that spanned thousands of worlds based entirely on elaborate ceremonies and impressive-looking technology that didn't actually do much of anything useful. Cultural attached Ben Clark was taking notes as fast as he could because he was witnessing something that had never happened before in human history. An entire civilization was simultaneously realizing that they had been taking themselves way too seriously for thousands of years. The aliens were not evil or threatening. They were just incredibly dramatic and had gotten carried away with their own importance. The council speaker, who looked like an octopus wearing a Victorian gentleman's outfit, removed his top hat and stared at it thoughtfully. "This hat serves no practical purpose, does it?" he mused while turning it around in his tentacles. "And I just remembered that our species doesn't actually need clothing because we live underwater on our home planet." "Why do you wear it then?" asked Ben Clark, genuinely curious about alien psychology. "Because it looks important," the council speaker replied, and then started laughing again. "We've been wearing ridiculous outfits and building elaborate thrones because we thought it would make other species respect us, but instead it just made us look like we were putting on some kind of cosmic theater performance." Dr. Susan Baker was fascinated by what she was observing because it confirmed her theories about alien behavior. "You built your entire culture around dominance displays that were supposed to intimidate other species," she explained. "But humans don't respond to visual displays the same way your species do. We judge things based on whether they make practical sense." The revelation spread beyond the council chamber as other aliens throughout the government began to question their own traditions and customs. The Minister of Ceremonial Procedures realized that his job involved creating increasingly complicated rituals that served no purpose except to waste everyone's time. The Director of Intimidating Architecture admitted that most imperial buildings were designed to be so impressive that they were actually impossible to use for anything practical. High Commander Zix Thaw, who had started this whole situation with his first contact message, was contacted by the council and asked to explain why he had thought cosmic winds of superiority were a real thing. His response was broadcast across the entire empire and caused even more laughter when he admitted that he had made up the concept during his first year at the academy and had been too embarrassed to admit it wasn't real. "I just kept adding more and more elaborate explanations every time someone asked me about it. He confessed during the galaxy-wide broadcast. Eventually, it became official Imperial doctrine, and I was too afraid to tell anyone that I had made it all up. The cosmic wind generators on our ships are just really expensive fans that I ordered to make the story seem more believable. The transformation of the Galactic Empire happened surprisingly quickly once the laughter started spreading. Within a week, the official name was changed to the Galactic Comedy Collective, and their mission statement was updated to focus on entertainment rather than conquest. The weapons of mass intimidation were officially redesignated as cosmic party equipment and made available to any civilization that wanted to throw really spectacular celebrations. Admiral Jake Morrison was appointed as humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Comedy Collective, and he found himself working with aliens who were enthusiastically embracing their new identity as the galaxy's premier entertainment organization. His first official meeting was held on a space station that had been converted from a military fortress into what could only be described as the universe's largest comedy club. You know what the best part is? High Commander Zixtal told Jake during their meeting, "We don't have to pretend to be serious and important anymore. Do you have any idea how exhausting it was to maintain that level of pompousness for thousands of years?" Jake laughed and shook his head. "I can't even imagine. But I have to ask about the cosmic wind generators. Are you going to keep using them?" "Are you kidding?" Zixtal replied with genuine enthusiasm. "Those things are amazing for parties. We're thinking about installing them on every ship in the fleet. Nothing says fun like banners that flutter dramatically in the vacuum of space." The former Doomsday cannons became the centerpiece of the galaxy's most popular entertainment events as civilizations discovered that having their planets temporarily redecorated with cosmic disco balls and giant sculptures was actually quite enjoyable. The weapon that had once been designed to inspire fear became a tool for creating the most spectacular light shows and art installations the galaxy had ever seen. The ritual of diplomatic superiority was converted into a comedy routine that became so popular it was performed at entertainment venues throughout the Empire. Former Supreme Negotiator Crix Dalnorthix Silenax, the 17th, became one of the galaxy's most successful comedians, specializing in impressions of pompous officials and elaborate dance numbers that mocked traditional alien ceremonies. Earth became the unofficial headquarters for the Galactic Comedy Collective's Department of Humor Studies. As other species came to learn from humans about the concept of finding things funny instead of intimidating, Dr. Susan Baker established the first intergalactic school of comedy science, where alien diplomats could learn how to use humor to solve conflicts. Instead of elaborate threats and ceremonial displays, the change wasn't just cosmetic, because the galaxy actually became a much more peaceful place once everyone stopped trying to intimidate each other with increasingly ridiculous displays of superiority. Wars became comedy competitions, and territorial disputes were settled through elaborate joke contests that often lasted for weeks and attracted audiences from across the galaxy. Captain Nicole Price, who had witnessed the first alien military demonstration, now commanded joint human alien fleets that traveled throughout the galaxy, putting on entertainment shows for civilizations that were still learning about the concept of humor. Her ship, the UES Freedom, had been equipped with its own cosmic wind generators and disco ball cannons that made every mission feel like a traveling carnival. "I never thought I'd say this," she told her crew during one of their missions to entertain a newly discovered civilization, "but I think I prefer shooting disco balls at asteroids instead of actual weapons at enemy ships." The galaxy had learned that sometimes the best way to deal with people who take themselves too seriously is simply to help them realize how funny they actually are.